This episode is brought to you by the new true crime docuseries American Nightmare, only on Netflix. In 2015, the Vallejo, California Police Department received a strange phone call about a kidnapping. But when the truth is stranger than fiction, you won't know who to trust or what is real. A fast-paced true crime thriller with cliffhangers at every turn. Watch American Nightmare now, only on Netflix.
Welcome to Case Q&A, a deeper dive into the popular True Crime Arizona podcast. Our focus this episode, the murder of a young couple on Bumble Bee Road. I'm Kris Pickel, joining you for a discussion with the journalists behind the True Crime Arizona podcast, reporter Briana Whitney and producer Serjio Hernandez. And guys, this is still a cold case, so walk us through the murder.
I think the fascination with this one is the fact that it is on Bumble Bee Road. It's a weird name, and from the get-go, people have kind of been glued to that name. Well, what could happen on a name that's so innocent, a road like that? But it was anything but innocent for Lisa Guerrieri and Brandon Rumbaugh. It was this young couple. They were in Scottsdale. Lisa had a really good job at SRP. Brandon was a trainer, and he had gone to ASU, and they seemed pretty happy. I mean, they'd been together for about a year, and like a lot of couples or people who get out of college, you may not have the most money then. They wanted to go to Disneyland for their year anniversary celebration. Instead, they thought, hey, we can save money. Why don't we just take the car, we'll take a couple cameras up and go look at the stars and spend the night in the back of the truck bed on Bumble Bee Road and then come back the next morning. And that was the plan. Instead, not only did Brandon and Lisa not come back home the next morning, but they were eventually both found shot dead in the back of the truck. And this was years ago, and it's still unsolved.
So Lieutenant Frank Barbaro with the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office was one of the first deputies on scene. He was able to describe the scene to you guys in great detail. What were they able to take away just from examining the scene? What evidence did they find there?
So here was the problem with the scene. It's a popular place for people to come camp, hike, go shooting.
And you guys, before we get to the actual evidence, you guys went out to the scene. What is it like out there? You spent some time out there researching this story.
Yeah, we did. Anybody that's driven I-17 going up to Flagstaff or Prescott or any of those cities up there, they've seen Bumble Bee Road. It's just kind of one of the last roads you get to. It actually, I think it is the last road you get to before you get to Sunset Point. So it's everybody sees the name and always, at least I did, giggle. Bumble Bee Road.
Bumble Bee Road.
Yeah, cute name, So when you get off the highway, though, it goes into dirt roads pretty much maybe 100 yards off the freeway. And as you keep going down the road farther, it has a turnoff here and a turnoff there. People go out there and they drink.
Party. It's a big party spot.
Yeah. But they also go out there shooting.
ATVing.
It's also one of the roads you can take to get up to
Crown King.
Crown King, that's right. Yeah.
So it's kind of deserted, but it's not deserted. It's actually very active. It's out in the desert, but then it's very popular.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the desert, but it winds down kind of into the valley, but you can see it winding from the highway. So it's weird because, it's secluded, but it's not.
Describe for me where they found the truck. Was it a turnout? Was it right off the side of the road?
Yeah, so like I said, like Briana said, the road curves a lot. They have pullouts where people can park and unload their ATVs and also shoot. People go shooting a lot, like I said. So where they found the truck, it's a little bit hard to see just off of Bumble Bee Road. You kind of have to go in maybe another 50 yards in to see where the truck was. And it's just really because it's got a little hill to it and some bushes and some, I believe,
we had a hard
boulders.
time finding the exact location they pulled off on when we went.
And that's going to be key. I want people to keep that in mind for a little bit later in this discussion. We'll talk about why that is so important. But Lisa's Uncle Mike, he really walked you through a lot of the background, and he loved Lisa like a daughter. Describe their relationship and what she was like.
So Lisa was an incredible singer, and Mike loved to hear her sing in church. Just really described her as this kind of ball of light for their family, for her friends, and Lisa's dad, unfortunately, passed away from cancer. That was Mike's brother. And so her uncle Mike really stepped in to be a big part of her life after her dad passed away. And I think what really built that connection was the fact that Mike promised his brother, I will watch over Lisa. And ultimately, that's what has been so hard for him about this. I mean, for a slew of reasons, obviously, but the fact that he told his brother before he died, I will watch your daughter, and Lisa still ended up getting murdered.
Okay, and let's talk about the murder scene. We started to touch on this earlier, but let's go back to what Lieutenant Frank Barbaro told you they found at the murder scene. Describe the murder scene.
So my first question right off the bat, and I think a lot of people's question was, well, was this a murder-suicide? I mean, they're both dead. It's a couple. Could it be domestic? Well, no. They said they were both found shot multiple times, and there was no weapon at the scene. So you have these two dead bodies, no weapon, and probably one of the biggest pieces of evidence that they found was the disposable camera that Lisa and Brandon had bought at, I think, a local Walgreens nearby. They had brought it just to, take pictures of the night. That was found thrown away from the truck and broken in half. Lieutenant Barbaro and the other detectives believed that that camera was deliberately broken, that whoever was there and committed this crime did not want there to be evidence. But one of the best parts, I think, about our investigation was that for the first time, the detectives agreed to show us the pictures that they were able to develop. There were a few, including solo pictures of Lisa and Brandon in the back of the truck, and those are definitely the last known pictures of them alive.
Describe those pictures.
They look relaxed. I mean, they look happy. And
are they hanging out in the back of the truck together?
Yeah, it's the kind of pictures you would take if you and your girlfriend or you and your boyfriend were just hanging out in the back of a truck, which that's literally what they were doing. No camper on the truck, just an open bed. Like the uncle said, they probably went out there to take pictures, to hang out, make out, and look at the stars, because it would be, you'd be able to see them really well out there. And it just looked like pictures, he posed and then she posed. Selfies weren't a thing back then, so
it was very
there were no selfies.
Disposable, click, rewind the thing to go to the next one. They were black and white. But then, weirdly, there were also some pictures on there that looked like the inside of a building with a CFL light bulb, and detectives still don't know where those were taken.
The CFL light bulb, why does that really come into play?
Because they weren't very common back then in 2003, 2004.
Describe what they are.
The swirly light bulbs. That's a terrible description.
That's a good description.
Yeah, and they're basically the light bulbs that they were phasing out before LED became prominent.
Okay.
That's what they were. And you know what? I got to say, those pictures always creeped me out because they look like a shot you would see in a horror movie right before someone dies.
Well, do you see the rest of the room?
Not really.
You just see a picture with a light bulb?
Well, so the angle's kind of Dutch, kind of at a really weird angle, and you see what I thought was like wood paneling, almost like a shed. And there's two of those. I can't remember the other one. That's
they
the
were
one
all
I focused
pretty
on.
blurry. It almost looked like as if you accidentally hit the button and were moving the camera and didn't mean to take a picture.
Okay.
That's what it looks like, but it's very obvious that they were taken inside something or somewhere.
So obviously there are some pictures that are from the murder scene right before the murder happened. So this just would be important to who were they in contact with before they came out.
Where were they?
Right.
Because they bought that camera, I believe, in Prescott. It was either Prescott or Prescott Valley. It was a Walgreens.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't buy it in Scottsdale. Yeah. They bought it while they were already up here. So that means they went somewhere.
Yeah. So who knew where they were going to be because they were, as you say, in an area that was hard to see.
Now, the other thing you asked about was what else was found at the scene, and we should note this is very important. They had brought up that disposable camera. They had also brought up a video camera. I think it was Lisa's mom's camera, and they wanted to video and do whatever they wanted up there. And the video camera case was found at the scene, but no video camera.
So somebody stole the video camera. Were there any other indications that there had been a robbery? Was anything else missing? Were their wallets with them? They didn't have cell phones at the time, so they wouldn't have had cell phones. But was it ever noted if anything else was missing?
I believe he did have a cell phone.
I actually do think Brandon did have a cell phone. I'm not sure if Lisa did.
But he hadn't made any calls, so that you wouldn't be able to triangulate where he was from the cell phone towers. I don't even know if they had that grade of technology.
Did they still have the cell phone? Did he still have the cell phone on him?
I believe he did.
I believe he did. I don't remember anything else being taken that they know of besides the video camera was really the main piece of evidence that they just didn't find. And they have the serial number and everything of it. They've never been able to locate it.
And they do believe that, at least Deb, as we'll talk about her later, one of the volunteer investigators, she does believe that Brandon's pants were went through. Now, I'm not sure if I remember why, if it was because his pockets were pulled out or something.
So somebody searched him. So they're going, the investigators. Is their theory that this was a robbery gone bad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, I would say that's the theory that investigators believe.
Okay. But the family believes something else.
Correct.
And what is that?
They believe that maybe Lisa and Brandon's friend group was somehow involved. And the reason they believe that is Uncle Mike told us that one of Brandon's guy friends who knew Lisa wanted to date Lisa, and that Brandon and this friend kind of argued about it, got in some sort of fight over it, and that this may have been some sort of revenge. That was the only motive that Mike could think of as to why anybody would want to take their lives.
And something very key in this, who found their bodies?
The friends. So
that one friend that was interested. And as we pointed out, this was an area that was difficult where you would not have seen the car right off the road.
Yes. I don't necessarily believe those kids, and I'm saying kids because they're all very young, were involved. I mean, that type of area, you would probably tell your friends, hey, we're going to go hang out at Bumble Bee. Most likely, Brandon went to a spot that he knew.
And the friends would have known also.
Exactly.
To me, the friends finding them wasn't really the main reason as to why they could be involved. I think for me, more of the suspicious part of things was when this friend cleaned out his entire apartment up and left, and nobody knew where he went and was jumping from state to state. That's where I think it gets a little suspicious, because if you care about your friends and you are looking for them and you're upset that they were killed, you would think he would want to do everything to help the investigation rather than up and leave and disappear.
Possibly, or he's freaked out, and which is a Sergio?
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I disagree with Brianna.
I don't know.
You know, as somebody that young that went through a traumatic situation where they lost two of their friends, I totally think it's understandable if you're distraught and just want to get out of here.
A girl that he has a crush on dies, and you're the one that finds her and your friend. Yeah. So that's a very important part of this, that we don't know the motivation. Was it a robbery gone wrong, or was it a murder over being jealous? Let's skip to modern day, because you actually talked to the investigators. You guys talked to the investigator that Barbaro, who was first on the scene. Why did he agree to talk to you and show you evidence that had not been seen, those pictures that we were talking about? Why did he say, 16 years, it's time?
Yeah, that was actually a pleasant surprise. Sergio and I did not go into this investigation knowing that we were going to see these pictures for the first time. We also didn't know they were going to divulge a new theory to us as well. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the fact that they were so forthcoming was nice. They also talked more about the caliber of handgun. So this is a lot of detail that we don't always get in an investigation. And I think because it's been so many years and there's nothing new, they think, well, in this day and age, any little information, maybe that could spark something that somebody knows or saw.
Okay. They have no lead, so just trying to garner more information, finally get it out there. What's it going to hurt at this point?
Exactly. But you would also know, Kris, after he stopped rolling, people start talking.
Yes. Okay.
Every time.
Really fast. I want to get to that. That's going to be a big part of this because that's kind of the more of the behind the scenes that we don't always hear about. But I think for this, you guys need to introduce who Deb West is.
Sure.
So because she's going to be important in the conversation talking about behind the scenes.
Yeah, she is. So this is kind of cool, actually. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Department has cold case volunteers. Now, these aren't normally people who were prior law enforcement. They have done all sorts of different things. I think in Deb's case, she was a teacher. I believe she was involved in politics. She had a kind of an interesting, eclectic background. She genuinely just cares about these unsolved cases at the department and is pouring her free time into trying to help solve them. And this is her case.
So when you went there to talk to Lieutenant Barbaro and Deb West, the volunteer, what were you expecting? What did you get out of them that, okay, this is what we expected, and then we'll move on to what you got that you weren't expecting?
I think we were expecting kind of the run-of-the-mill.
The recap?
The recap, yeah, the recap, and, you know, we're never giving up, and we're still looking, and this and that. But I think that those small but important details that they gave us that we had never heard really made a big difference in captivating people with this case even more, and it made a big difference.
So you had gotten more than you expected when you got there. You got to see the pictures and describe the pictures. You found out it was a .25 caliber gun, which nobody knew about this. And you guys did the interview, and it was really interesting. And then you have this other sound of, we hear you going, well, this has never been talked about. Let's turn the cameras back on. Tell me what was happening right then.
So at that moment, what had happened was we had finished up the official interview, and we were just breaking down. The first time we were going from Barbaro to Deb, but I had multiple cameras going to get multiple angles. And I had turned off, I think, 2 of them and left 1 up still. And I was getting around to changing stuff and reorganizing the room so it looked a little bit different. And everybody just starts talking. You know, once you have the case on your mind, everybody just starts talking about it. Well, I think this. Well, I remember this, and this happened there. Sometimes when people don't have a camera on, they feel more comfortable to talk.
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew that one of them was still rolling, and we caught the whole.
It wasn't deceiving or anything. It was just
No,
it
we were
was
just breaking down.
Yeah. And you know, actually, we asked him to after the fact. We're like, hey, can we use that? Can we roll that? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we knew we weren't breaking their confidence.
And this was something, what he told you when the cameras came back on, when all of them, this was something that had never been linked to this murder before, correct?
Ever,
And,
yeah.
and what are the details?
So around the same time, there was kind of a similar robbery and murder that happened in Crown King. There were men camping, I believe, from Yuma, and this suspect, Rusty Rankin, came in, stole the truck, killed the men, took the truck to Colorado, holed himself up in a hotel, and it became a standoff situation, and it ended up that he killed himself, took his own life. And so they never got to question Rusty. But it was a very similar crime to happen in a very nearby area, and that was a very bizarre thing to happen. This isn't something that is a common occurrence.
The double murder out.
The truck, taking it, yeah.
But Lisa and Brandon's truck, there was no indication that anyone tried to steal that, correct? Because they were actually in the back of the truck.
Right.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the pictures that I saw and the file video that I saw, it was a full-size truck, and if somebody walked up to it from the front, you wouldn't see anybody in the back, especially a young couple. They're probably laying down there cuddling, maybe sleeping. Don't remember the exact time it happened. But you wouldn't see anybody, so you would think nobody's in the truck. So if you were,
Wanting to steal a truck.
Yeah, you would go look.
You would have been.
Try the door. As soon as that happens, you probably woke up or startled the people in the bed of it.
And that's definitely what investigators think happened. Somebody was going for the truck itself or something inside the truck, didn't realize there were people in the back, got startled either by them or they startled Lisa and Brandon, and then they killed them.
So what happens next? This is still a cold case. Where are they going with it?
You mentioned Brandon's pants, and that was something that Deb said they still needed to go through when we interviewed her. that there were pieces of evidence they needed to re-examine.
16 years. Why hasn't it happened?
That's a good question. I don't know.
You know what? I think it's kind of telling that Deb has to be a
The
volunteer investigator because they don't have the staffing. It's a smaller city. They don't have the staffing to continue to investigate these unsolved cases. You know,
So
that's
it's-
why you have Deb volunteering her time and her energy into trying to.
It really falls on Deb, I think, because and that's what we run into so many times with these cases, especially the unsolved ones that are decades old. The resources just aren't there. And so I think Deb is going through with a fine tooth looking at what was and what wasn't done and saying, where can we do better? And Brandon's Pants was definitely one of those places. They also were going to question the friends again and other people involved. You know, that friend that Mike feels is involved was let go because of a polygraph test. And usually
Let go by who? By Yavapai or by another agency?
by Yavapai County Sheriffs. Yeah, so Lieutenant Barbaro says he was not involved really in the throes of the investigation when this friend was let go solely due to that, because you shouldn't be let go solely due to a polygraph.
Right.
But,
And this is the guy who took off right after the murder, found the bodies, and then took off.
correct. And so
At one point he was cleared, but he was really not.
right. And so Lieutenant Barbaro said, everybody is still on the table. No one's been cleared by detectives and sheriff's deputies as of now. And I did email the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office just about a couple weeks ago, checking in on this case. What's new? Is there any new updates, developments?
Have you checked the pants?
I know, right? And they said there was nothing new on it. So I know that's really hard for the family because it's just no closure. And it's unfortunate they were where they were. I mean, I guess you could call that the perfect murder location, because when we were out there, I mean, once the sun goes down, it is pitch black.
Yeah.
You can't see anything.
We got a shot. We wanted a time lapse to show what it looked like during the day and then what it would look like at night when they were out there. So we waited around, set up a camera and just waited for a time lapse in a nice area to get the sunset too. And once the sun goes down, you can hear a lot more of the animals and everything, but you get that constant hum off in the distance of the I-17, and it feels like you guys were saying in the beginning of this. It feels very secluded, yet you're close to the road. You can see it at certain times on certain parts of the road, but you're secluded. You could scream and nobody would hear you.
And that's exactly it. I mean, yeah, you can see life, but you're in the middle of nowhere. Pitch black, no cameras, besides the ones they had. But, I mean, those obviously didn't catch anything. So it's unfortunate that it happened where it did, because it would be very difficult to find any more evidence or have anything come forward. It would take somebody talking at this point.
Does Lisa's uncle think they're ever going to solve this, Uncle Mike?
I think he hopes. I think he really does hope.
So he's pretty bitter about it. I mean, I will say, in interviewing family members of victims, everybody grieves and processes differently. But I would say more often than not, family members are sad and heartbroken and the tears. But Mike was angry. I mean,
Somebody killed
Mad.
his niece and got away with it.
yes. And he is livid about that. As I understand, I mean, of
Absolutely.
course. But it was interesting to me, and I've said this, for, over a year now when we did the investigation. That's not an emotion that we always get from somebody. And I found it really interesting that's his bottled up emotions very much come out in anger versus sadness.
Is doing the cold cases, is one of the reasons you guys focus a lot on cold cases, is try and get some answers for the families?
I would say yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this long enough that it's amazing what little nugget can jog someone's memory or make someone come forward. With these cold cases, people just forget about them. It might have been a headline story for weeks or months at a time in the news, but after a while, people just forget. And putting it out there again, somebody might remember. I do want to say this: what I got from Mike was also a lot of guilt.
Yes.
And I think that part of the guilt was
Because he didn't know to stop her to go out, or where was the guilt from?
he tried to stop her. I think the guilt was his brother's dying wish, take care of my daughter. So he felt an obligation, and then from there he felt the guilt when she was murdered.
That's a heavy burden to
And
carry.
it's definitely torn their family apart in general. I think there's some tension between family members now, and people believe different things, and it's absolutely taken a toll on them. And we do often see that with these cases. But yeah, I think in this day and age, I mean, we're seeing cases solved from decades ago. We really are. And not every case is going to go that direction, but we just don't know, maybe by us taking it a step further, getting more emotion, that human element, maybe that resonates with somebody and they haven't ever come forward, but maybe seeing them now, you know, with that emotion and that feeling and that loss, they will. Maybe it will go viral. Maybe people will see it on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, the possibilities these days seem to be endless, and the more attention on these cases can only do good.
And somebody, a lot of times when people commit a crime, they will say something to somebody else. So maybe that person might not have the same loyalties to protect someone that they had 16 years ago.
Sure.
That's also why I disagree with Mike in terms of who he thinks did it. And the reason I say that is because if 3 kids, young men, were involved, and all of them had kept a secret all this time, and none of them have felt enough guilt to come forward to say, he did this. I feel horrible now. He did this. I find that kind of hard to believe.
It's a good point. That is a good point. Honestly, when I first did this investigation, I think I leaned more towards that the friends were involved. But now, having more experience under my belt in terms of dealing with true crime cases in general, both solved and unsolved, I do get that and kind of agree with that now, that I don't really think it's probably very plausible that is what happened, and more or less it was probably an opportunist out there who was trying to steal or do something.
Yeah, we don't know. So
they didn't know.
Yeah, at this point, we don't know if it was an attempted car theft, if it was robbery gone wrong, or if it was a murder over jealousy, or possibly something that we just don't know the motivation. But what we do know is that this is a 16-year-old cold case and a family that still doesn't have answers. On behalf of Briana, Sergio, and myself, thank you for joining us for this episode of Case Q&A, a discussion of the True Crime Arizona podcast.